Pretend you're a simple person in the 9th century, just minding your own business, when it just starts downpouring like mad. It's mid-July, so it's not really that uncommon, but oh man, it's intense. You decide to just wait it out, but it just doesn't stop. Hours turn into days turn into weeks. The rain persists. Finally, after 40 days of constant rain, it lets up. You go out and learn it only rained in your town that entire time. Why? What happened to cause that crazy rainstorm? Howdy y'all, and welcome back to another episode of the Sanctified Podcast, the show where we explore the stories of various saints throughout history, learn about what they did, and how we came to recognize them as saints today. Today, we're going to explore the life of Saint Swithun, a simple egg restorer and posthumous miracle worker. Swithun was born in Wessex, England, but unfortunately we don't really have an exact date. It was likely around the turn of the 8th or 9th centuries, and we really don't have a great deal of information about his early life altogether, which I would take to indicate that he probably wasn't related to royalty or high status, but I don't think he was necessarily poor or anything like that either. He most likely came from an average family of the region at the time, so there was no reason to record all of those details. Presumably in his early to mid-adulthood, King Egbert of Wessex appointed Swithun as chaplain, counselor, and as tutor for his son, Aethelwulf. On October 30th, 852, Swithun was appointed to Bishop of Winchester after Aethelwulf became king. Aethelwulf had been king for a while at that point, but likely kept Swithun on as a guide or an advisor until he was confident enough to fulfill his duties without Swithun as an advisor. During his time as bishop, Swithun was known for constructing new churches and restoring old ones. In fact, he was so good at that and such close friends with the king that King Aethelwulf gave away a tenth of the royal lands for the church. When Swithun would travel, he walked. He didn't ride horses or ride in a wagon. He walked. And when he would hold feasts for other saints' feast days or holy days, he invited those in need, not the wealthy. The only consistent story of a miracle during his life was during his time in Winchester. And I have to admit, I haven't heard of this miracle exactly before. Pun intended, you'll find out why. A worker got angry and decided that he was going to steal some poor lady's eggs and smash them. Well, Swithun just happened to be walking across the bridge at this very moment, and he helped the woman. He prayed for the restoration of the eggs, and then they were suddenly back to normal in her basket, as though they were never smashed in the first place. Most of the other records that we have of Swithun's life are actually tied to more normal practices for somebody in his position at least. He was witness to 9 charters between 854 and his death, likely on July 2nd, 862, but it was possibly in 863. Beyond that, we don't have any significant records of other things that he did. Now, I know it might be tempting to question his legitimacy because of the lack of records from his life, but bear with me and you'll learn why that lack doesn't really impact his legitimacy. A little over 100 years after his death, Swithun was used as the patron saint of a restored church at Winchester. In 971, on July 15th, his body was moved from its resting place to the new basilica. Leading up to and after moving his body, miracles and inexplicable events were recorded. But before we get to those events, let me list some of the other miracles that history has recorded from after his death. And a lot of these come from orthochristian.com, and Dimitri Lapa was kind enough to collect them all, so they were pretty digestible. So, just picking a few at random, there were 3 women from the Isle of Wight, all of them blind, one from birth, and the other 2 just lost their eyesight during their lives. And they wanted to visit Saint Swithun's tomb, but they were blind. They couldn't really do it. They found somebody to help them, but that boy was mute. So they all had a really good reason to go ask for Saint Swithun's intercession. Well, they got to his shrine, spent the whole night in prayer, and come morning, the women could see and the boy could speak. There was another time where a man, for unknown reasons, had his eyes removed and his ears cut off. Obviously, he couldn't see or hear then. Well, he just kind of suffered like that for close to a year, and then he went to Saint Swithun in hopes of having some sort of healing or comfort so he wouldn't be in pain. Well, after praying, his eyes were miraculously restored, and his ears could hear again. And on another occasion, there were over 120 people who were just suffering from all sorts of sicknesses, and all together, they visited Saint Swithun, And within 3 weeks, all of them were totally healed and just went back to their normal lives. No sign of their terrible sicknesses lasted. And just one more, there was a servant whose boss got angry at him for whatever reason. So he put him into irons, he just shackled him and threw him to the side. Well, that servant escaped, and he was pretty beat up, but he managed to get to Winchester, visited Saint Swithun's shrine, and after he prayed, the bolt that was holding his shackles together just fell off, and his shackles fell, and he was free. And there are just so many other miracles recorded, and I'll provide a link down below. It's definitely worth checking them out, because some of them have incredible stories, and I just glossed over them. There's more details to these stories if you care to look them up for yourself. But now, back to the events around Saint Swithun's death. Before he died, he said that he wanted to be buried outside his home church, so that the feet of the passers-by might go over him and the raindrops from the roof fall on top of him. But after being buried there for about a century and all the miracles that were happening, King was like, you know what? We need him moved. So they moved his body. Well, after that move, it rained so heavily that people believed it had to be connected to that moving. There's even a rhyme associated with it. It goes, Saint Swithun's day, if thou dost reign, for 40 days it will remain. Saint Swithun's day, if thou be fair, for 40 days 'twill rain nae mair. Now, some records do say that it was actually a torrential downpour that just started on his feast day a while after the move. So maybe it was at the move, maybe it was after. In any case, it is associated with Saint Swithun and his feast day. Also connected to the miracles surrounding Saint Swithun's resting place are orders from the king. And he said that every time a miracle happened, the monks had to stop what they were doing, go to the church, and praise God. Every single time. That might not sound too bad, right? It sounds like what they should do. Well, apparently it got pretty annoying. The monks decided that they didn't need to do it after every single miracle, so they stopped going after every single one. They're getting woken up 3 or 4 times a night because they were so frequent. I mean, I'm not a monk, but I wouldn't be too thrilled being woken up 3 or 4 times a night by strangers because a miracle happened. It'd be cool that it happened, but I'd probably be pretty irritable the next day. Well, after they stopped going every time, Swithun appeared in a dream to 1 or 2 people and warned them that if the prayers and praise to God stopped after each miracle, the miracles would cease as well. So the monks decided that, you know what, we can deal with the poor sleep schedules as long as the miracles keep coming, people keep getting healed, and just miraculous events keep happening. But as was a little too common with early saints and people who were just highly revered as being close to God, Swithun's body was sadly broken apart. Various communities wanted to be home to the saint, and they were like, you know what, if we can't have the whole body, let's all just have a little piece. It seems a little barbaric today, but I guess society was different back then, and they all agreed that it was a good decision. His head was known to have been taken to the Canterbury Cathedral, and an arm wound up in Peterborough Abbey. And then, in 1093, what remained of him at his resting place in Winchester was moved to the new Norman Cathedral at Winchester. His tomb had so many visitors that a retrochoir, a space directly behind the altar, was built in the early 13th century to accommodate all of the pilgrims. Even his old tomb was a very popular pilgrimage site because of the miracles connected to it. Later on, in 1476, Swithun's body was actually moved into the retrochoir. We're not really sure why it took so long to move it, but it did. Unfortunately, it was demolished in 1538 during the English Reformation. However, there is a reconstruction of it today. Over 40 churches stand today that are dedicated to Saint Swithun, largely in Hampshire, England, and there are actually quite a few schools and institutions in England and Norway that are dedicated to Saint Swithun. Swithun is regarded as a patron saint of drought, and his feast day is July 2nd, though some places celebrate on July 15th when his body was moved, which is the traditional day in England, where he was from. If you have any questions, please let me know, and I'll do my best to answer them. So what do you think of Saint Swithun? What would you do if it rained for 40 days after Saint Swithun's feast day? I hope you found the story interesting, and I look forward to learning your thoughts on Saint Swithun. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to support the channel, you can subscribe, download the episode, like, comment, share with your friends, or send me a suggestion on a saint to check out by emailing me at sanctifiedpodcast@proton.me. You You can find the show on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, Podbean, and more. And I try to get a consistent upload schedule. It's been a little out of whack, but I think I can get back onto it. And I upload every Thursday. Take care and have a wonderful day.